Great. So welcome everybody, and apologies first for being remote again. I happen to be in Michigan for work this week, but hopefully this is my last of a whole bunch of in a row work trips. Let's go over the agenda briefly. Since we don't have a quorum, we'll delay the minutes until our next meeting. After a few updates, we have several guests who are going to talk to us a little bit about the public art that's planned for a new community space. Even though this occurred prior to Park becoming an entity that would have otherwise approved this, Peter Britt suggested, and I thought it was a really good idea, that we use this as an opportunity to both learn about what the two pieces that are proposed, as well as think about our role going forward as it relates to art in community spaces, because there certainly will be more of those opportunities. And then Kate, I see, is on, and she has a really interesting opportunity for us to become part of a National Public Art Archive. So we'll hear about that and hopefully get to a few of the other things that are on the agenda. So let's do some updates first. And Sean, I think I'll turn it to you for any information we have about our Pierce Island, the work on the contracting. As people know, the council did accept the plan to move forward with it. I presented at the council's meeting on the 19th, and hope you all took a look at the PowerPoint that DeBari Associates sent, which gave a little bit more information about the plans. So Sean, how is that going?
It has been assigned in the legal department, which is shorthanded this week. So I'm hoping to have something by Tuesday when I come back. I'll be off the rest of the week, but it is in process. I just don't have a specific update as of this evening.
I should also mention that Stephanie Secord and Monty Bohannon are working on a press release that will be widely distributed about the project and the selection. And for the council, you saw the memo I prepared that explained our whole process. And I think, Sean, that's the memo that you'll also share with the folks that were finalists who did not receive, who requested any additional information.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Sean? Did you say the project has been assigned to the legal department or by the legal department?
To the legal.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's what I thought, but okay. Thanks.
And let me just say, because as you know, I can't see all of you that well, so please, if you have questions, just speak up.
Chris, we have a quorum and then some.
That's great. So let's go back and accept the minutes of the July 31st meeting. If somebody wants to move that.
I believe there might be a slight error.
Well, we need to move it first and then we'll ask for corrections.
Okay, I'll move it.
Okay, so Mara, in a second, and then we'll do corrections.
Okay, was there a second?
Yes.
Yeah, good. It says that the next meeting is August 28th. And I went to put that on my calendar and I see that it's
Today is August 28th.
oh, that's today. Whoops.
I know it's
I will shut up.
Well, that's a mark of how fast the summer is going for all of us, I think.
But it's it's actually to the agenda, I guess. My correction might be.
So any other corrections? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. The Ferry House sculpture proposal was withdrawn. We did, as many of you commented and provided helpful suggestions for the memo. The memo was sent to the council, and subsequently the Friends of the South End decided to withdraw that proposal. Kate, are you able to give us any info about that? Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm driving back from an appointment outside of Boston, so I'm kind of stuck in the evening traffic. The Friends of the South End decided to pull that application. I think part of it was just a general misunderstanding of what all it entails to put forward a proposal for public art. And I think that there was some confusion around the RFP that was on the website for Pierce Island, them thinking more that it was like a call for proposals, that we had a set amount of money sitting and, you know, we were just looking for people to send in proposals. I don't think that they understood our process and the whole RFP process.
Do you think they may come back with the same or similar kind of request?
I think it really depends on the success of the Ferry House tour this year, because I think they were really thinking there would be funding attached. And so if the tour is exceptionally successful and they have enough money to go ahead and solicit that, you know, artist to do the sculptures, and then they might come back to us. So
Okay, good.
it's kind of a wait and see until after the Ferry House tour.
Mhm. I will say that in sending a note to us, they commented on how much they appreciated the information we provided and the professionalism and thoroughness of the process. And so I would say, and Alyssa made this comment, that it really was a good test of our criteria. And I do think we provided them with some really helpful information if they decide to go forward. Any other questions about that? Then Kate, I'll turn to you again to that there will be first reading of the ordinance changes that we suggested. She might not be able to hear. The council,
Yes, actually, I just spoke with legal today about the changes. The council approved first, so the changes will be coming forward for first reading. I don't anticipate too many questions, but you know, anyone who wants to can feel free to be there. We will have second reading at the second meeting in September, and on that night, it would be good to have someone present to present on the changes.
Can you
I'm happy to. Yes.
Can you repeat that date?
I don't know the date of the second meeting of the month offhand. And I can't really. I'm driving, so I can't really look at my.
I thought you said a date.
I think
No,
it
no,
would be the 16th, right? Sean?
Yeah, it'll.
I can look it up. I thought she
Yeah.
said it.
Yeah, 16th.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It might be good. I'm happy to present this. I mean, I'm perfectly comfortable presenting the changes. But I think it would be nice to have someone else there as well from the committee, just in case there are questions, because the request initially came from the committee.
Good. And so we'll get an email out to people closer to that time. Newsletter acknowledgement of the memorial to Mark Stebbins. This is an old item, but I wanted to I know you all talked about it a couple meetings ago, that we wanted to just acknowledge that possibly in the city's newsletter. Did anybody get assigned to do that?
So, Chris, I can speak to that. When there was a ceremony there that the mayor spoke at, and that was publicized because the mayor was part of the process.
Okay,
So I think there's a little bit of reluctance to just send out another press release.
Okay,
And that's kind of where it sits today.
all right. So perhaps we might do something a little more personal then, for really the Stebbins family as a thank you.
Chris, if I may, that's what I was thinking, since it had been in the newspaper and, but I still think because, you know, we represent public art, that it would be very appropriate for us to just even send a personal letter and we all sign it, you know, just from this committee. And, you know, I know several of the Stebbins, they're very great supporters of public art.
Right.
I think that would be most suitable.
Good, so we can prepare something like that for review at our next meeting then. And I know the working group on the LGBTQ community outreach and Pride potential public art of some type hasn't met yet, but Alyssa wanted people to know, I think that's Nancy and Kate, that she's ready, she's got time in September, October. So perhaps that working group can have an initial meeting and brainstorm some of the plans to go forward. And I attended the African Burying Ground Stewardship meeting, which occurred a couple weeks ago. As this is in the light of maintenance of public art, which this committee has talked a lot about. As some of you have observed, the small mosaic pieces in the Sankofa that covers the internment spot have really failed, largely because our climate of freeze thaw isn't kind to those mosaics. And the artist Jerome Meadows has been working with Suzanne Woodland to try to come up with some solutions for that. Those ideas were presented to the committee, and aesthetically, it was questionable. The committee did a site walk to see how things might fit on the proposed solution. And again, it was not very well received. I sent some of the material ideas that we saw presented by different artists to suggest different materials that at least might be explored for that site. But I wanted people to know that because we've had a lot of questions about whether anybody is paying attention to the deterioration there. And yes, they are. And they really just haven't come up with a solution yet that both will withstand the climate as well as be aesthetically appropriate. They have another meeting coming up in a couple of weeks, and we'll see if there's any progress on that.
So Chris, the part that's deteriorating, are those the tiles that were made by the middle school?
Oh, no, those are fine. The part that's deteriorating is on the ground. It's the cap essentially for the internment site, and they're small. They're 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch mosaics that form the design of the Sankofa. But it's just, you know, as we know, these things require maintenance. It's been over 10 years. So in some ways it's not surprising, but it's also why we pay so much attention to it.
Chris, I just want to, I put in the notes going back to the previous item. Since Alyssa and Kate are not in the room, I reflected in the notes, I'll reach out to those two and get our first meeting going.
Great, thank you, Nancy. And then while not on the agenda, but because Terrence is here and Ernie is here, great progress on getting the codfish art going. And so I don't know if Terrence, we want to invite you to speak to that. Sean, do you have I think, some of the slides.
Yeah, have a mic.
No.
Hello, everybody. Terrence Parker here. Oh, there's my porch, right. Yeah, so this is the codfish project that I was commissioned for. That's in the pavilion at the Bohenko Park. So the process has been to remove the existing low voltage lights. Then the city solicited painting contractors to bid on the painting of the ceiling and all the structure of the ceiling in a marine blue that I chose, and that's complete. And I think Sean, do you have a picture of that,
I
Sean?
think I do. So bear with me.
I think I just sent that to Ernie and Chris and everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't, did I not copy? I didn't copy
No.
Sean on
Well,
that.
it got forwarded to me.
Oh, good.
Pretty sure.
So that, and then I contracted with Visible Light to do, to buy, there it is. There's the painting and the blue lights. So that's all LED blue lights. So the task was to change the character of this pavilion. And I think we've done that already without even hanging the fish. So the fish are based on I'm trying to tell the story of the settlement of the seacoast, which was really projected forward because of the codfish fishing industry of the 1500s, 1600s and beyond. And it's based on historian Jeff Bolster's book, who's a UNH professor and a resident of Portsmouth. His book called The Mortal Sea, History of Sailing and Fishing. So he documented a lot of that. So my idea was to change the character and hang, a series of wooden codfish that I'm in the process of painting. So the painting process, it's basically painting the wood. They're going to be they're not going to be in the elements, but they are going to be exposed to salt air. So they're going to be treated like a boat. So it's 2 layers of priming, 2 layers of epoxy, and 2 layers of boat enamel. And they're going to be colored like a fishing lure, silver. And the picture of the porch is me in the process. And I think I sent Ernie, sent you a picture of those one silverfish.
Try to find that.
Yeah, so there's the fish. They're all lined up, and that's my process painting the fish. It's so they're all hand carved by a friend of mine in Providence, and I'm doing all the painting and installing. So Jeff Bowers, the electrician, he's going to help me install these. They're going to be hung with aircraft cable. So, and the fish are 6 pounds to 15 pounds, so they're pretty light. And so the idea is to cast shadows of the fish on the ground plane.
Terrence,
So-
are you pleased with how the lighting works with the blue paint?
Yes, it's quite nice. You can see it a long ways. You can see it
Good.
from the middle bridge. You can see it. I mean, it's pretty dramatic because you could barely have seen the lights. The low voltage light that was in there was really under illuminated. So it's very dramatic, as that picture shows it. And then it looks good even in the daylight because there's no light that's going to overpower the sun. So the shadows won't be evident in the day, but that's the blue in the, you can see the painters.
Saw that today.
It looks really good.
Right.
And just thinking in sometime in October, this will
Well,
be.
contracted to finish by October 1, and I will make that deadline.
And
I'm a
just for
deadline guy.
everybody, it was a P&H 400 project. We got the
Yeah.
ARPA grant for Rockingham County Artist and additional funding from P&H 400.
So it's going very well, actually.
Very, very good. It's very exciting to see this.
It's fun. It's fun.
Good.
And it's
Um,
it's the seacoast, which is extra fun.
Will we want to plan some sort of ceremony or
Definitely.
maybe would be a better word of the installation?
And I think, Ernie, that's something that,
I want to talk to P&H 400 and the city and find out what they want to do. And then we'll also have, which we haven't shown, is from Endeavor, the plaques are up, and I think the permanent lighting will, not sure if the permanent lighting it wasn't up last time I looked, but So it's just kind of nice to see what's
Mhm.
happening with the whole park.
Yeah. So I would see that, Portsmouth 400 would take the lead on this, but maybe we could think of it as a joint Portsmouth 400 and Park, activity to help plan a little ceremony for it.
Like we did with the Endeavor, I think.
Yeah. So Ernie, we'll have you lead us on that, and after you've met probably with Valerie, and the city can tell us how we can be helpful.
Chris, did you have any needs about the verbiage that was accompanying that? I know you had reached out for some.
Well, Beth, I sent, Beth was helpful in doing some editing on the plaque that goes with the codfish, and Terrence, I think you received that.
Correct.
So I think to give just a little explanation, and Beth was helpful in tightening it up a little bit, since as we know it, people tend to only read the first couple lines of those type of plaques, so. It's good.
Well, the plaque was originally written with, I always have, I had Jeff Bolster do my original editing on that.
So I think it's time to turn to Peter to kind of open up this discussion about public art and community spaces, and another little show and tell for us. And turn it over to you, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Britz, Director of Planning and Sustainability. I don't have a lot to say, but just to give you a little context for what you're going to see, Terrence is going to present on 2 sculptures that are in community space at the 70 Maplewood site. And I'll talk a little bit about community space. So community space is kind of a prescripted open space the city's come up with as part of our character district zoning. And so if you're in the character district and you want an incentive for either greater height on your building or greater density, well, I guess greater height really, you can either, it used to be you could provide community space or workforce housing, and the workforce housing wasn't getting addressed. So they changed it to you need to provide community space and workforce housing in these character districts. These are these downtown areas only. And then in the Gateway district, there's also a community space requirement that's in the zoning that people have to provide some community space. And so what it really is in a development like this site, you'll see there's a pocket park in the back of the site is one of the community space types. There's 17 different community spaces listed in the zoning, like pocket park and wide pedestrian sidewalk and park itself. And I don't know, I have them all here. Can't remember all the different names, but so things like a pedestrian alley, wide pedestrian sidewalk probably wouldn't have public art in it, but it could. Things like a square would likely have could have art in it, but would be a community space type. A piazza is a community space type. I said pocket park, playground, recreational field, common or green, community garden or farm, outdoor cafe. So all these different community space, there's 17 in total in the zoning that developer can use to meet the requirements of the zoning. And the way the community space is treated is essentially as city property. So when the planning board reviews the project, they have to provide some sort of guidance to the developer that they'll have to maintain the community space in a certain way and ever so often. And the thought is that if there's public art going in these community spaces, then this committee would review that public art. So it's being treated as if it's a city park, but it's really private property that's being turned over to the community as part of the development. And they may have gotten some incentive for that development to do that. So in the case of 70 Maplewood, it was before Park really had its rules and was set up for that. So Terrence agreed, and Tom Ballin, who has the development there, agreed to come and present on what they're putting there, which part of it was reviewed by the HDC, and in some cases that would be the case. But in this case with Park, we just thought it'd be good for you to hear about it so you can understand the context and understand what may come before you in the future when it comes to community space or public art.
Mhm.
For that, I'll just turn it over to you, Terrence, if you
let's pause first and see if anybody has questions about what you've said, Peter, because you just laid out a lot of information.
Yeah, sorry, a little fast, probably. Any questions about what I said?
So community space could be any new building that's being built or renovated, or be it commercial or housing over a certain dollar amount or a certain
So
area?
if they're in the character district, in these districts, and they
Sure.
want an incentive, so if they want additional height in the building or additional density in the building, something that's allowed additional incentive that wouldn't be allowed normally, but they're gonna say, we want another floor on the building. In the case of 70 Maplewood, they put another floor on the building. So as part of that requirement, as part of that request, then they have to provide community space. And workforce housing now, but in the, that's changed recently.
So by character space, you mean like the historic district or the south end or the?
Yeah, it's really the downtown core. It's character district or form-based zoning, areas where there's prescriptive zoning saying how the building has to look, how the building and the site has to look. Is spelled out in the zoning ordinance
Thank you.
in those 17 different community space types. And so you can think about it like open space, like a developer may have to have open space, which they would without the incentives. But if they go for the incentives, then the community space, there's a certain percentage of community space they need to provide.
Thank you.
I have a two-part question.
Yeah.
So, from a scheduling perspective and planning perspective, we are now in the loop.
Yeah.
And then do you have a list of things that are coming down the pike?
Well, I think the process would be they'd come to they'd get the community space designated. And then so once that community space is designated, the addition of the public art could come after the designation is approved by the planning board.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have to happen as part of the planning board approval. It could come after.
And it's not, you can have community space without public art.
Right,
So it's not a requirement.
that's right.
The community space is a requirement. Public art is additional.
Just like, you can think of it like a public park. There may be sculptures in a public park, but there's not a requirement. for sculptures in a public park. The same type of thing. This is public community space. And if it makes sense to put public art there, then you guys will be the arbiters of that.
And we have no input on what particular kind of community space they choose from that diverse list of what possibilities there are.
That would be the developer's choice
Yeah,
and the planning
cool.
board's approval.
And the developer would be responsible for paying for the public art, right?
That I'm not clear on. That, I would think it probably isn't. I think probably the developer may want the public art and may choose to have it. In that case, they could, but it depends on how the public art gets there. It's really whether the public art goes there or not.
Right, because
Well,
the community
That's
space.
actually an interesting example because let's say we had more money than we do. We have a small amount of money, but I assume that in the future, somebody might have community space and we might say, we think that's a perfect place for your mural. And we have $15,000 in the kitty that we could put toward that. Or the developer, like Mark McNabb's development, could say, I'm really interested in putting public art there myself.
Right. The developer might want to pay for it, but we wouldn't, say you have to put art there. So they may decide, I'd like to put some public art here, and then they'd come talk to you about it.
And there's so much art in the hearth example.
Right.
And there's quite a
Yeah.
bit of art
That
there.
was his choice. Wasn't required.
And we weren't in place.
Yeah, the chair,
Oh.
there's a question in the audience. I think so, but come up to the microphone, I think.
I just wondered, what about percent for the art? Oh, Antoinette Schultz, one of the artists who is doing this project here. What about percent for art? Is that no longer part of?
Well, that only applies to public projects. It doesn't apply to private developers' projects.
For a city project, the city project has that percent, but a
Oh.
developer development doesn't have a percent.
I always thought they did some.
No. So Peter, I suppose Park could go to a planning board meeting when community space is being suggested and advocate in a particular community space for public art, and it would be up to the planning board to make that a stipulation, right?
Yeah, you could make a request of the planning board or the developer in advance of the planning board and then support it. If the developer is on board, I think would be probably the logical way to do it, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I just have one follow-up question. Is the city responsible for, maintaining the space, the community space? Like the landscaping and
Yeah.
that, or is that the developer?
Typically not. Typically, that's something as part of the planning board approval process, the easement's put in there, and in the easement language, usually it says what the developer's responsible for, and usually it's maintenance of the landscaping and the art and the whatever else is in that community space.
So this to me, this opens up a whole other area for us to begin thinking about and paying attention to, which is why it was really great that Peter made this suggestion, because I hadn't certainly been thinking along these lines of these developing community spaces.
Yeah, the one thing I should add is that, so I talked mostly about the character districts or the form-based zoning part of the downtown, but the gateway zone, which is the Lafayette corridor, basically, there's a lot of properties zoned gateway. And they also can use community space. And so that's another place where community space could come in and public art could go into a community space there. Again, that would only be on a development that was a development site. So it'd have to be a big project with multiple buildings, but it's not just in the downtown. I just want to make sure that's clear. Any other questions?
This is great. I could see us taking this recording and developing even a little FAQ just for ourselves about community space. So why don't you introduce the art that's coming in?
Yeah, Terrence Parker is gonna come in and talk about two different pieces that are at 70 Maplewood. One is a mural and one is a sculpture.
Yes, thank you.
The artist up there with you guys at all?
You know, I'll
You
bring her,
gotta do all of it.
I'll
All right.
I'll tag her up in a minute, yeah. Thank you, Peter, and Peter described the community space really well. There is a lot of options for developers to choose from. Tom Ballin, who's not here tonight, was the developer of this particular property, and he chose to design a park, which necessitates 360 degrees circulation around it. So there's a public sidewalk that goes all the way around the building. So there's a railroad track on the upper side of this. And then the cemetery, that north cemetery. So there's some existing utility boxes in a transformer. And so Tom Ballin chose to put a mural screen around one of the transformers that faces the street that Sean, if you go to the, there you go. So I did this mural. It's based on the history of the North End, which is there's a Rose Fiandaca and her family. There's the rope walk, that little map, the mill pond. And that's the Underwood building, who owned the rope walk back in the 1700s. So Tom wanted the history to go way back, not just the North End Italian district. So this mural was approved by the HDC, and that's a screen to screen the view of the transformers from Maplewood Avenue. And that's strictly the generosity of the developer, Tom Ballin. And he hired the company that built the arch, Neocraft sign. So it's ready to go. So this is a sketch of that. So then the other generous piece was the Portsmouth 400 group had the piece by Antoinette Schultz, who I'll introduce in a minute. That's this piece. So if you go up to that first drawing again, Sean, so the pocket park, see the gray areas on the upper end, those are all like sitting areas. So the one to the far right, that is where Antoinette's family piece will be located. And so that's designed to be in the corner of that sitting area. So there are benches, you can walk around that completely, and it's accessible by the brick sidewalks that surround the building. So that's where her piece is going. And Tom Ballin's did the footing for that piece when the concrete was poured for the building footing. So a lot of the underground stuff is already done. So I'm not sure what the schedule is for installing Antoinette's piece, but I'd like to now introduce Antoinette Schultz, who she can tell you her own history, but that's her piece. It's called Family, and it fits, again, it fits in really beautifully with the, you know, the spirit of celebrating the north end of Portsmouth.
I just have one question. The location of the sculpture is it on the north end of the building?
It's on the north end of the building facing the
Where
railroad.
there's nothing right now. I mean, you can't really get access to it, but this you will be able to have access.
Yeah, there'll be a
Yeah.
walkway that surrounds the building. There'll be
Creates a
a
whole-
lot of green space there. There's a lot of green space between the building and the railroad tracks. There's also stormwater containment, that light green area, and there's ground covers growing on that. So there's a lot of plant material back there. What do we have? 7 or 8 trees back there. So it'll be a nice little space to, you know, find, because it's
Yeah.
not that visible from the main ways, but it'll connect to the other properties to the left, and you'll know that there's a public access from Maplewood when you're walking by Maplewood. So
Mhm.
now it's time for Antoinette to talk about her piece.
Want me to sit here? Yeah. Okay, here I am, Antoinette Schultz, the sculptor. This is the drawing I have of the site. So you can see it, it's right here. And there is a lot of greenery around it, will be, yeah. So I like that site very much because I felt people could sit on the steps and contemplate the piece, because it's my work in general is very contemplative and kind of peaceful. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that I use granite so much. I find granite to be in the public is wonderful, because I think for some reason people are drawn to stone. I mean, they want to be near it and you can touch it. I mean, it can be written on and all that. That's happened too before, but at least it can be cleaned in. And the bronze is great too. It will turn green over the years. It can be rinsed once a year with water and cleaned, but it should stay brown. The color on there is quite lovely. You can't see it in the picture. And the plaque. So what happened with the plaque is, originally when I did my proposal, I said I did not want to do the plaque. Most of the projects I've done, I didn't have to do it, and I really never liked doing them. So at the end, I ended up having to do it, and then we had to do it. We were going to put it someplace near it and so forth to read. And then I thought, well, why not have it part of the design of the sculpture? And so I had to make another piece of granite, triangular piece to put on there. But I really love it. I think it kind of adds to the piece. So it's so funny how things kind of work out sometimes. You know, they seem like, oh no, this isn't going to be right, but there it is. It's right. So I'm quite excited about it. The sculpture on top itself, I really love it. If you could walk around it, it has movement and beauty all around it. It really, I don't know how I did such a good design, if you want to, but it ended up good, yeah. So, and originally the idea was that the male, he's kind of like a tree. And it was kind of started out in my head, a tree, it grows, you know, and so it's called the Circle Builders. So it's on these 2 undulating circles that kind of go around, and they look like they go around. So originally, I designed this piece to be about 16 feet high, so that people could walk through it, children could ride, or even use the base would be cement, and the children could even roller skate around, you know, and that was my idea. They could swing on the arms, you know, but it was a long time ago, my original design, and nobody was interested in art in Portsmouth at that time. So I wanted to put it behind at my grandmother's house on Marcy Street, where the Players Ring is. My mother was born right in there, right on the stage, right on the stage of the Clary's Place Ring. Every time I go there, that's what I think of. But in the backyard where I wanted it there. But anyway, this is what I get to do anyway. I never thought I'd get to do it, and I'm very pleased to be able to have done it. It was really an act of love on my part. And it was wonderful to meet Massimo, and everybody here. I really admire all you because sitting on a committee and looking at art and trying to have it for the public, and it's a tough job, and it really is. And so I thank you. I don't know if there's anything else. That is already pinned and epoxied together. So it will be brought in whole, okay? And I really am waiting to see when I can install it, because otherwise I'm gonna have to store it. Okay? Any questions?
Can I ask the dimensions?
Yes, well, it's kind of fun. The base is 34 inches by 34, but it is just about my height. And it's so funny. Before I came, I stood there on a piece and I looked at my original design, and sure enough, it came out just really right on. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy. Yeah. It would be nice if it were a little bigger, but I think that really works nice. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question that may be for Peter. For any of these community sites, will there be signage that encourages the public to use the community site or directs the public in? Because I could see, there might be tentativeness about whether this really is open to the public. I mean, how will that work with these sites?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it is something that the planning board tries to do, is to try to invite people into the site to make sure the developer provides some signage, some, no barriers to the public. It is supposed to be community space. And I think down the road, we're doing different wayfinding projects around the city. Down the road, we'll do a one specific to community space as well. So people will see city signs pointing to it in addition to the signs a developer might put on the site, just to bring people in, because they are really nice to that, open space in the city, and getting people there could be a challenge, right? People might not feel like they can go into a space if there's not a really explicit sign there. So we're trying to work with the developers through the planning board process to make sure there's signage, and then we're going to try to augment that with city signage in the future.
I was thinking the same thing, if it's not a public thing or a place like the Harvest where you go to eat, or a park or Prescott Park, if it's seems like more of a private community, I probably would feel like I was trespassing or something, or might not even know that it was back there. So
I think this one does have signage that points you back there.
great.
I was just thinking of in Boston in the North End, how they have that trail, you can mark it. I mean, you could put a mark like that so people would follow it. Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions for anyone?
Massimo had something he wanted to say.
Yeah, great.
Massimo Morgia, I always have something to say. I'm supposed to be at work right now, so I might as well say something. Hello, everybody. When I was 3 years old, no. I had the great pleasure to work with Tony and got to know her. And she's very modest. I hope you all look up her website. She's done art all over the country. She has beautiful pieces at local universities throughout the country and municipalities, and she's just done some incredible things. So please do Google my dear friend Tony, because she has done an extraordinary job. I was part of the Portsmouth 400 committee, and that's how we ended up with this year. We did a lot of work about the North End, and we also created an incredible documentary that will be aired during the New Hampshire Film Festival. So some of this other information will be in that documentary. But we were able to raise some money to do a memorial for the folks at the North End. We have the bench over at the Sheridan. I don't know if you're all familiar with the bench that was there in 1986 by the residents. All the names of the residents of the North End It was the urban renewal projects. I don't know how you're all familiar with the history. After the documentary, you'll know all about it. But for now, as Tony was mentioning, it'd be really neat to have this little walking trail. The benches over by the Sheridan, that was one of the original pieces. This piece will be over at Tom's property at 70 Maplewood Avenue. We're hoping to do something in the new park later on as well. So we would like to have that sort of little walking tour of that whole area. So it might be a nice way to introduce it. But Tony's done an incredible job. I just wanted to, my hats off to her. Please do look her up. She did this out of passion and love. I was able to raise some funds for her for the materials, but the rest of it came out of the goodness of her heart. So I just wanted to say that to everybody, make sure they all knew that. All right. Thank you all for your.
Great, thank you.
And I thank you. I gotta get back to work, but I withdrew all of my. Tony, I gotta go. They're gonna yell at me. I haven't even changed. I'm walking like this. Thank you. All my best. Any questions or anything you need, reach out, please. All right.
Thanks, boss.
Thank you.
Mr. Sean.
You're welcome.
Does anybody know how to spell his last name for me? Oh, that's his first name.
M-O-R-G-I-A.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Peter or Terrence or Tony? Oh, we really appreciate this. I think it's great to get a little preview. It sounds like nobody quite knows when installation will happen unless you do, Peter, but it looks like the project has a ways to go.
They're making good progress. He's doing a, good job with the site and moving along quickly. But it's a
Good.
big project.
It's a big project. So we'll be looking forward to that, and we'll probably in a upcoming meeting maybe do some more thinking about community space. I think it would be really helpful. I try to pay attention to things that are coming before the planning board, but if you think to alert us about proposals for community space that would allow us to advocate with the developers, that would be great, Peter. I know it doesn't always, sometimes these things come up very quickly.
They do, but I can try to do that. Yeah.
Good.
If you guys have any questions for us or our staff, reach out anytime.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so next, and this is very related to what Massimo was just talking about, the Public Art Archive. Kate, are you in a position to talk about this? Are you still stuck in traffic?
Probably muted.
She's muted.
She's muted.
She may be doing battle with.
Well, you should tell her that she's muted. She might not realize that.
Kate, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
I was trying to talk. I am unmuted now, I think. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm not in traffic anymore, but I'm still driving. But I'm happy to talk about this. I attended a workshop with the leaders of the Public Art Archive, and they were basically looking for input on public art projects and what draws people to public art projects. And in the process of that meeting, they noted that they have essentially a listing of public art projects throughout the country. And that listing is on their website. And anyone who has public art throughout the country can upload information about a public art project to their archive, essentially, of information. And there's no cost to do so, which was kind of surprising to me. So we actually have a few projects in Portsmouth, well, at least one in Portsmouth and one outside Portsmouth, that are currently listed on the Public Art Archive. The benches at the library, carved benches that were done by Jeffrey Cooper, are listed on the Public Art Archive. And there's a piece by Terrence Parker listed on the Public Art Archive that's not in Portsmouth, but is in the surrounding area. But essentially, we can upload information about all the public art pieces in the city to that archive. And the great advantage to that is people from all over the country can look at the public art archive and search for public art in locations that they're planning to visit. And they also have an app. You can do it on your phone. So it's kind of a wayfinding system for public art. So this is an opportunity for us to consider.
I think it's a great opportunity, and we already have, as you know, a lot of information that, you know, I don't know, Ellen and I started, and Beth, I think, has added to it. We haven't done anything with it yet, but this is one thing we could do with it to get listings available.
That would be great.
Yes. So I've been
Yep.
also taking photos of all of those pieces and trying to put it all together. And thank you for sending me that material. So yeah, we could use that as we've been talking about for doing our own map for our site, but this is just a natural extension. So just gotta get working on it.
To me, it sounded like a great opportunity to, for people who like public art and already paying attention as though they're looking it up on the website and are traveling. This might just be a natural place where they automatically look if they didn't know that we had our own map. They might just automatically look in this location. So it would be nice to have the information there.
Yeah. And am I right, Kate, that there's a functionality there that if we enter this, it can actually also help to create a map? Did I see that? Did they explain that?
Yes, their app has a map in it. So it automatically populates locations of public art pieces. So if they showed us an example of, you know, if you flew to Denver and you landed at the airport and you pulled up the map, it shows you all the art if you're taking the train from the airport into town and where the art is located along that path and where there's art in downtown where you're getting off the train. So it was really kind of cool when they pulled up the map and you could see all the points at which there was public art.
So because we have that information digitally already, it feels like it could be something that could be a relatively simple task to feed in to the forms.
I would think so.
And then keep adding to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Beth and I can work on this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how it works and use information we already have.
Yeah.
I think that would be great. And then report to us, you know, what else we need to do or how it's working, what other kinds of information we might need to collect.
Sean, do you want to just?
I was gonna say, if this application or this, if it creates a map, then maybe there's just a link.
Yeah.
Versus creating a second
Separate.
map.
Right.
That has to be maintained.
Yes.
If this software will do that and this group has control over the input and you like what it spits out in terms of a map, might just be as simple as a link versus building from scratch.
Yeah.
That's the extent of my technical knowledge.
Excellent. I think this would be excellent. And I think you sent us also a link to the webinar that people could watch the webinar as well. We could share that with people. That explains a little bit about all of this.
Yes, it was an interesting webinar because it was people from all over the country asking questions about the public art archive and how it works. But then they really wanted to gather information from the attendees on what we thought about public art and why people visited public art or why people didn't. So that was particularly interesting.
And this is very related to the next topic. Ernie suggested she would be interested in establishing a working group for promoting public art. So obviously inventory is a piece of it, but Ernie, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe what you had in mind?
Well, I guess I was just thinking, and I also want to say, I don't know what's already been done. So a lot of this may have already been done, but I mean, we're making a lot of progress. And I think it would be great to do everything we can to make sure people are aware, both within our community and visitors of the public art that's available in Portsmouth. So I just thought it might be a good idea to have a little side committee that could look at that. And I would see that the archives as being a big part of that. So, and then I don't know, I know something like a walking tour, just, you go to a lot of communities and they have that available. And we may already have some of that, and then I think also I thought about it because we were talking about when a private developer does public art and how we're going to handle that as Park as far as promoting it, whether do we do a press release or, is it something we just reach out to them and request certain things from them and then we add it to the website. But I just think it would be good to have a group that's focused on building awareness of public art in Portsmouth among, our community and visitors.
I mentioned the role of the Arts and Culture Commission because, of course, their role is also marketing and promotion. And I thought a first step, Ernie, if you're interested, might be meeting or talking with them about how they might dovetail with our efforts there, because it fits into, what I think they're planning, larger efforts around promotion. I don't know, Sean, if you have any insight into that.
They have a working group that is very energized around the same issue. So I think there's opportunity to leverage the additional.
Do you want me to reach out to them, Chris, or?
I think that would be a good idea, and it would be Emma and Linnea. Sean can help make that connection because they're interested in general promotion, and ours would be kind of a wing of that work.
Chris, just to revisit it, can you clarify for me the difference between the two committees?
Oh my goodness, this is a test. And I will say there's a lengthy description on the website about that, but Sean, maybe you can give some voice to that.
Well,
Off the cuff.
The Arts and Cultural Commission was created to, they inherited the new cultural plan, right? There was a couple of groups before in 2023 that created a cultural plan, which is the 5 to 10 year look forward. How do we protect and enhance and expand our arts and cultural identity and assets and efforts? So they're still trying to get their legs on what is it they're going to focus on, because they want to find things where they can apply effort and get results now. Within a year, 2 years, they want to build that up. So they've been standing since January, and they now have these working groups. One is around communication and promotion. There's others around preservation. There's just some of the different tenets that came out of the cultural plan. So as much as they inherited the cultural plan, they weren't told how to implement it. They were told, here it is, and they get to decide.
Yeah.
So that's much broader than this particular group, right? Just put in place to make recommendations to city council about public art. And so.
But I do think it would be good to reach out to them so that we're not, first of all, duplicating efforts, but that if there's a larger campaign of promotion, that we see the public art as a piece of that.
And isn't there a website that Go ahead, Kate.
I just wanted to add, the arts and cultural. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The Arts and Cultural Commission's real task is to support a love for art in general in the city, and that includes supporting artists arts institutions, developing awareness and education around, you know, appreciation for art. So it's not just visual arts, which is usually what we talk about when we talk about sculpture or paintings or things that way. But we're talking about music and theater and dance and, you know, kind of the whole range of the arts in Portsmouth. So, and we try to keep them out of the public art realm. They're there to support and to support the Public Art Review Committee and to promote the work the Public Art Review Committee is doing, but to not really interface or interfere with public art.
Mhm.
I would also just add that the two chairs come from historical institutions because
Mhm.
cultural is also up there in the name. So they definitely are talking about history as well as history and culture as well
Right.
as the arts.
Mhm.
And wasn't there a page created that talked about the difference
Yes,
park and they want to call PAC?
it is on the city's website. It's kind of technical and lengthy, but it does outline that. But
They had the same concern. Sorry, Chris.
yeah.
So I can sort of help summarize. What we're doing essentially is the stuff that is connected to the municipality, right? Public art, percent for art, art on public property, art in the public realm, visual art, public art. What they're doing is all the rest of what's going on in the community, at our cultural institutions around town, in the schools even. So we're really the one that we're taking on the mantle that ArtSpeak was created to do in terms of public art and municipal stuff. And they're taking on the mantle of everything else that ArtSpeak was created to do, basically, with, you know.
Yeah, including
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to keep our artists here in
Yeah.
Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's different efforts to make sure that we don't lose all of the people and artists and venues that we have. Preservation's a big underpinning of what the work they're doing is how do we protect what we have and grow it and not lose it.
And
Mhm.
pipeline, you know, because the great artists and creative people that made Portsmouth what it is today, they're aging out, you know, and they're moving away, they're retiring, they're not with us anymore, and they're not being replaced on a one-to-one level because young people, young emerging artists cannot afford to live anywhere near the seacoast.
Mhm. So all that being, I think that was really helpful. Thank you for that question. You can, I think, Ernie, maybe see where the dovetailing of we fit within, we're just one slice of what they might be doing in a broader way, but it'd be important for them to know that we're interested in that to know about the archive that we're talking about. And then for us to begin thinking, you know, as you said, what are some other ways we can begin promoting what we're doing? I think we have a great opportunity with Terrence's piece, much as the Cija Chen's piece created a great deal of attention to public art in the city. We have that opportunity with Terrence's piece. And then, you know, these are staged well. That'll come in October. And then in the spring, presumably, we'll be able to do the unveil the Pierce Island piece. So I think thinking how we keep public art in the public eye between some of these high points is really important. So I'm glad you're willing to do this.
So I'll reach out. Who do I reach out to? Is it Emma at the Historical Society?
Emma Stratton and Linnea Grimm are the co-chairs for PAC, Portsmouth Arts and Cultural Commission.
Okay, so I will reach out.
And
to them.
Ernie, I'm happy to come to that meeting with you if you want another person from the
Okay,
committee.
yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
At some point, probably think who's interested
Yeah.
in being
Yeah.
on a committee that's looking
Yeah.
at I mean, if you do something like developing a walking tour, a public art walking tour, that I don't know if the Historical Society would be interested in it, but because so many of our pieces do have
That's
a
a good question.
historical
Yeah.
message, but I kind of like to look at it
Into what's
as
been done,
what we
that's
hope to
started,
accomplish
right.
and then think about
But I think
what are the things we can do, like the public archive,
Right.
that's kind of a
I'm just saying,
no-brainer. It doesn't cost
You want
anything.
somebody to join you for the meeting. just-
Okay.
That's
Yeah, good. And Ernie, I think I reported on this one at a meeting that you couldn't attend. I have met with the committee to just give them the general sense of what we're doing. So they are familiar with our goals, et cetera. So they have that broad familiarity. We didn't talk particularly about promotion. So this will be a great next step. Then the one other thing I put on the agenda, and this was precipitated by really the Ferry House people asking us for money. And that is, now that we do have a small amount of money from our first $25,000 from the CIP plan, we really do need to discuss and build some criteria for when we will use dollars. Obviously, we want some of the dollars that are in that trust already are past dollars related to maintenance, as well as the current $10,000 we just put in there for maintenance based on the Pierce Island sculpture. But opportunities will come forward when we will want to make a recommendation for spending money from the trust. So it seemed to me a working group, and Jen volunteered to be on it, and I'm happy to be on it, just to begin talking through criteria that we would bring to this group about what should we take into account for, what are our priorities for spending, what would we take into account before we would make a recommendation, what the limits are, just a whole policy. It's really a policy about spending money that is in the public art trust.
And guidelines is what you're talking about.
Exactly.
As
Yeah.
far as money going into the trust, and I'm just gonna bare my soul and throw myself under the bus, but Antoinette Schultz asked a question or referred to, she thought that the percent for art also came from private development. I confess I did too, that I didn't know it was, when I joined the committee, when I heard percent for art, I thought it was also like private developments over a certain dollar amount had to give a percent for art. So,
Lenny, if that was true, we would have so much art, we'd be tripping over it. Right?
art all over the place. I was like, let's go.
Or be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to do that. Jen said she would be interested. I don't know if there's anyone else who's interested in working on that policy and guidelines. No, we'll take a crack at
Being
it.
out of their seats.
They're all thinking about it, Chris.
Okay. Well, we'll all get into it eventually. So I think that's good. Is there anybody in the public for public comment or anyone online, Sean?
No one online and nobody else in the room.
Is there anything else people would like to bring up tonight?
I have one, I think it was the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, Beth had the wonderful idea of creating the certificate of appreciation for Corin and I can't remember Bryn and
Bryn.
other people.
Yes, the student, yeah.
So I went into Canva and I created something, showed it to Beth. She thought it was ready. I sent it to you. Can we make sure, or should I resend it? Can we make sure that that shows up in the next packet? So not too much time has gone by and they forgot that they even helped us. I just wanted to say that so that we all remember, and we'll add that maybe to the agenda for the next month.
Yes, please.
Very nice.
Resend it, then
I will resend.
Actually, and Sean, we should send them the PowerPoint. Corin, I think maybe saw it, but the others should all have the PowerPoint So they see the, the next iteration.
And Chris, I have another question. I know that it's coming, but do you have a sense of when the High Hanover Garage Percent for Art needs to get started?
I think we're ready whenever we're ready. Kate, is that right?
It should be. The city manager informed me that the money was allocated. So,
Oops.
She's breaking up, but she said that the money's allocated. And I'm wondering if we might not first connect on the money that's there for the middle school, because that's a long-standing project. It's not a huge amount of
that's
money.
a whenever situation. I would defer to Sean. On timing.
Counselor, you're cutting in and out, so I did hear my name, but I didn't hear what you asked me to
Responsible for
take on.
everything.
I love that. Sean, I asked you to do everything. No, I would say I would defer to Sean on timing. I'm assuming that the funds are there. I don't know if they've been officially transferred into the Public Art Trust, but they have been allocated for the High Hanover.
Mhm.
Okay, I can need to follow up on that.
Yeah, let's, I'm glad you brought that up, Nancy. So at our next meeting, let's talk both about the middle school and the garage, and maybe work on a schedule for when we think we want to initiate those, and the planning. And then Kate, I don't know if there's been any more talk about the skate park and whether there's going to be any money coming to us for the skate park.
Interesting.
I don't, my original response that I received back is that's not a building.
My understanding is that there is no money coming for the skate park, if you can hear me.
Yes. Okay.
I had a related question, since you brought up skate park. I think at one point we talked about having a list of sites and locations where we might want to put private art. I actually use the rail trail all the time, which is fabulous. And right by the skate park, there is that underpass. That's awesome.
Yes. And Peter, I meant to ask Peter to talk with us about that. When Peter and I talked, Peter brought up the rail trail as one of our next projects that we should be thinking about public art for. So that should be on our list as well. If any of you visited the rail trail, like in Newburyport, it's public art all the way. And so that is a huge potential next project for us.
There's a great path that goes from the skate park to the rail trail, which is just made for public art, I think.
Yeah.
I just have, feels like we have a little bit of time, so I'd like to bring up something about the High Hanover Garage, if I might. Is that okay?
Sure.
So going back to when I was on the council and very involved in Art Speak, there is a huge community, what's the word I'm looking for, when you love something and you remember it and you have a fondness, nostalgia for the whale wall. And we used to get so many comments when the whale wall was up on that private building and deteriorating, and people would, pitchforks and torches about how the city let that thing, go by the wayside. And we had to calmly explain to everybody that it was in fact on private property, and the city, if we wanted to, could not do anything about the whale wall. And of course, we all know the building came down, and it's in the zeitgeist of, at least 3 generations of Portsmouth people. So there's that. Then there is the Leadership Seacoast Arts and Culture Day, where Terrence and I stand in front of the Ruth Blay mural, and we talk to about 7 different groups for 20 minutes about the piece. When they come, I started doing this the first year, I did it 3 years in a row. I ask everybody to introduce themselves and let me know what their favorite work of public art is in Portsmouth. And every single group, definitely 1, sometimes up to 3 people, would say the whale wall. So there's that. So last year, maybe 2 years ago, I requested a meeting with Sean and the city manager because I knew that the High Hanover project was in the works. And I thought, here's an opportunity to have Whale Wall 2.0 on public property on the largest building in the downtown. And the stairwells provide uninterrupted vertical space. And we know that whales do go vertically on the corner by Macro Polo, as well as down by Fleet Street, although that's not quite as populated as the people walking by the Bow Street, Market Street intersection. So my proposal for everyone to think about, we don't have to debate it or talk about it, but think about, instead of doing like an open call for art, is do we want to really specify that this is an opportunity, and if not here, maybe somewhere else on public property, for a new and improved and treasured whale wall?
I just want to throw in, I was in Laguna earlier this year and went to Whalen's actual studio, and he had a whole wall up of all the places where he did this crazy tour within, I don't know, 60 days, where he did one in X number of cities. And I was talking to the manager about that and how we missed having that. And it wasn't the artist, of course, but he said they, love to have them in the cities where he was originally planned. So it might.
Well, I wasn't necessarily thinking of bringing that artist back.
Oh.
I'm thinking of a reinterpretation, a 21st century artist. We have incredible muralists all over the state of New Hampshire. Actually, there's an incredible group out in Nashua. There's all these muralists. We have many here in Portsmouth. So I wasn't thinking about him.
Okay.
Mhm.
'Cause
Clarifying.
we don't want to necessarily you can't go back, but you can take that nostalgia and go into the new century. So thank you for perhaps wasn't.
Also, just to build on your idea, it could be sort of a statement about, if it's the Whale Wall 2.0, to build in ideas about, the whole ecosystem of the ocean, not just the whale, but the fisheries that we depend on,
So I'm so
field
glad you
water.
brought that up, because it's like this idea. I was talking with Monty, and we actually have access to one of the vote, what are they called? Flash vote.
Mhm.
We could actually send information out to the community. There's 1,200 people on Flash Vote, and ask them, do they like the idea of a whale wall? Do they like the idea? We could develop 5
Yeah.
questions.
5?
I think it's 5 on
Yeah.
one single Flash
Yeah.
vote.
I think using Flash Vote for input this time would be really fun. I would just suggest we make it a little more open. I think a lot of people also have odd memories of the whale wall in terms of the commercialization of it and what happened, but building on it for, ecosystem, marine, give people some options. We certainly could, as you were suggesting, Nancy, we could say this time, we'd like murals, and we'd like them in the stairwells. We don't have to leave it totally open. We can really start to shape it a little bit more. So I think that's a great idea.
I would say with community input, because, we could throw it out to the community, and maybe they say, there was only one whale wall, we can never do it again, do something different. They might say that, we don't know.
Yeah. Right.
That whale in the river, so.
Yep. So anyway,
Right.
that's my thought, because it is, yes, we do have whales. We didn't have whaling, but, and it's,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I was struck by year after year, group after every single group, somebody said the whale wall. So
Yeah.
I thought that was really telling.
It's also, remember, because people don't necessarily have a good understanding of what public art entails, it's the one visible piece that people could see. So we made, and it
Yeah.
was huge, right?
Nancy, you said outside the stairwells.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not inside.
Yeah. Now, one thing to check, I had thought that the developers who are doing that current building had promised to allow space for a mural, and that they were in fact going to do a recreation of a whale wall. Do we know anything about that?
It's tiny. It's like something you could put over your sofa. It's just a little side of a build. It's tiny. I'm just showing a picture now of.
How do you feel about it, Nancy?
This is the garage, and there's two, especially when the leaves fall, you can really see the other one over here behind the brewery, but this one's right on the corner. It's very visible. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I
there's
feel-
nothing to say that both would be the same, you know, either. So there, we have some options in.
do we, sorry. Yep, that was all. That was it.
This is Kate. Can I add one thing before we close? On the question of the skate park and of the rail trail and some of these projects that financially would have triggered percent for art, we probably should get a legal opinion from the legal department on how the ordinance is being interpreted, because I've been told that because they're not buildings, they don't trigger percent for art. But I'm not sure that that is an accurate reading of the ordinance.
When we first did the ordinance, I tried to have that broadened and at the time to be municipal projects, because in some other states, that's how it's happened. And at that point, they were not willing to do that. Now that's a long, long time ago. But Kate, we should look at the ordinance and at second reading, possibly make an amendment so that we could include that.
Right. So I can understand roadways not being included and that kind of thing. Of course, that's not going to be included. But like the skate park is a building project. Just because it doesn't have height and indoors associated with it does not make it not a building project. So to me, that's something that I feel like maybe we need to talk about some more. And
Good.
Yeah.
I agree, because when you said the skateboard wasn't a building, but then we went to the rail trails, I thought, well, that's not a building either. That's a trail. So
Yeah.
one leads into the other, and they would make a perfect fit to have
Yeah, so let's see if we can broaden that language. We've broadened the amount of money and we're moving with that so far. So maybe we can broaden the language.
Yeah.
Good. All great ideas. One other I'll put on the table that I think should be on our radar, and that is to create an ordinance that distinguishes murals, especially since we're talking about murals, that right now in our ordinance, murals are signs, and that's come up again at planning board, and I know planning board will be looking at some of their ordinances, so that's one that also should be on our radar.
We should also note that the legal department has been working on the sign ordinance for the city for the last few years. We have some challenges around the sign ordinance in and of itself. And one of the other challenges that they have is that we don't review paint, but we somehow distinguish what's a sign and what's not a sign. And so it's a little bit complicated. And they've been trying to determine where the distinctions are.
Yeah, it's very complicated, but other municipalities do have mural ordinances, so it's something I think we can advise on.
There's a way to separate it.
Yeah.
and decouple from the sign conversation. That might be helpful.
Right. Okay. Great conversations. And I think I can't wait to see the codfish. I think it's going to look great. So we've got something really good coming up.
Definitely.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
But
Okay.
before we stop recording, it is really true that the next meeting is listed for September 28th. and
Yeah, I
believe
fixed it
that's
in the notes.
Sunday.
It's the 25th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's in the minutes.
September.
thank you, Mara.
All set,
Ellen.
recording?
Really?